Hi there and welcome to the Stock Club podcast, coming to you from the top floor of MyWallSt HQ here in Dublin, Ireland. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about Slack's recent listing on the US markets, Facebook's new cryptocurrency, and two companies that we would have passed up on in a pitch meeting. Okay guys, so before we kick off this week, we have to come back to something we were talking about last week, which was Slack's IPO. They've since, not really an IPO, Rory, was it?
No, it's not an IPO, it was a direct listing, which is kind of the same as an IPO, I suppose. It's just they become a public company without all the fanfare that usually accompanies an IPO. They just one day are listed. There's no kind of big ringing the bell moment or people standing around waiting for it to open. Although there was a bit.
Yeah.
But it didn't. So it basically just meant that the people who already own shares, largely the employees and the founders and the early investors, were just allowed to start selling their shares. Last Thursday, yeah. So because of this direct listing, I wonder, is that why maybe they haven't seen such as explosive growth as Beyond Meat or Zoom? Well, importantly, they didn't really. They didn't actually see any growth. It was reported the next day that Slack had increased something like 58% on its first day, which actually is totally incorrect. It didn't increase that much at all. There was a reference price, which was $26. I think it opened up at about 38, but no one actually had paid 26 for it, so the price hadn't actually risen at any stage.
It's not an accurate benchmark, as usually we have a guiding price.
Yeah, exactly.
Set by the banks, is it? Or?
Yeah, set by the banks, which is like their price range for the stock. So it didn't actually increase on its first day, but it's doing well. I mean, it has increased its value from its last private valuation. It's up threefold as a public company now, which is incredibly impressive, regardless of not having the kind of hubbub of going up 80% on their opening day.
Okay.
So yeah, they're trading now, trading at like $18-19 billion for the company.
And can I just check what you mentioned there, Rory? The only shares available were staff and early investors who could decide to sell within the direct listing.
Yeah, so it's like if in an IPO, what generally happens is they decide to raise money by issuing new shares. And what they typically do is they offer them out to the bigger banks, and the banks buy them, and then there's this day when they all start selling them, which is their IPO day.
Yeah.
That's not what happened here. They didn't want to raise any money from this going public. They just wanted to start selling their shares.
They just wanted to list.
So they're not raising any funds for the business itself. They're just giving early investors, employees, founders now have a liquidity
if they so wish.
A liquidity event if they wish to sell their shares.
Okay.
And would it be naive to say that's a sign of confidence on the part of Slack, not needing to raise money? Or
it's hard to know whether it's a sign of confidence. I mean, like the first time, this has been going on for years and years, this direct listing thing, but it was usually restricted to kind of the smaller companies that wouldn't necessarily generate a huge amount of public interest anyway.
Yeah.
The first big company to do it, and was kind of seen as a kind of trendy move on their part, was Spotify last year. A couple of the reasons they gave for it was, it was pretty costly to IPO. Again, they said they didn't need to raise any money for it. So I'm not sure it's necessarily a kind of confidence thing, but it's more of just it's the new trendy thing to do. If you're a cool tech company, to just direct list. But I have to say, I love Slack as a business. I really like it.
We've talked about it a lot in this podcast, and it's here at MyWallSt, it's just so ingrained into your everyday life. It's the first thing I would turn on in the morning when I come in.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so, I mean, if you think about the way people work, how the way we've worked has changed over the past 20 years or so. People used to work in offices that have their own rooms, their own office places. Everything you did was kind of like you do it on a document that you kind of sent out to people, and that was like the finished product. There wasn't the kind of collaboration that we see at the moment. Now we all work in kind of open spaces. We use Google Docs so everyone can change and comment, and it's like a document is never finished. It's kind of a living document forever, it seems. And Slack's really dug into that marketplace. Where everyone kind of has a say, not necessarily everyone has a say in things, but there's a lot of collaboration between teams, and teams from different departments get involved in various projects. So I think they're really they've really come out at the exact right time in terms of the evolution of how we work. And they have a great founding story as well, which I wasn't really aware of, which is that Stuart Butterfield, the CEO, the founder and CEO, actually, they started out as a gaming company, and they were trying to make video games essentially, and it wasn't really working out for them. And literally, with the last 5 million quid they had left in the bank, convinced their backers to let them develop this internal messaging system that they'd been working with within the company, and that was the birth of Slack. So, you know, it's kind of one of those, you have to fail a lot to find success kind of stories.
It's one we'll definitely be keeping on the short list for now.
Yeah, it's one of the few. I mean, we have a rule in here not to get involved in IPOs too early, and it's really,
It's a tempting one, isn't it?
even at that valuation, it's highly valued. It's a 49 times sales, I think, at the moment. It's a very attractive business. I think they've got incredible network effects in place there. There's really rapid growth and adoption by people. Like the way you can integrate with other businesses.
Yeah, it's hard to ignore.
It's very hard to ignore. And I mean, even when you see, there was a news story was it this week where Microsoft is kind of banning people from using it?
I think they're trying to probably force them. They have their own tool, Teams, is it?
Yeah, use Teams. Now, I've never used Teams, but the fact that they're banning their employees from using it says a lot about where they think that business is going. I reckon there's a lot of companies who'd like to acquire them. Yeah,
there was they've a partnership with Atlassian, don't they?
Yeah, so them and Atlassian are kind of doing the different sides of the same coin, really, I think, in different ways. So Slack's very much kind of the communication side of the tool, and Atlassian had a couple of competitors. I think HipChat was one of them. And Atlassian on the other side are doing a lot more of the kind of project management side of things and the development side of things. So our development team uses Atlassian products heavily. So I think, a merger of equals between those two companies could be quite interesting. Funnily enough, Atlassian's ticker is Team and Slack's ticker is Work. So
Work, yeah.
No.
Teamwork.
I liked Work. Others giggled when that was the ticker, but I actually thought that was quite attractive.
So moving on then from Slack, I want to talk about Facebook. We haven't talked about them in a while.
Okay.
And I suppose what was, I think, one of the cheekiest moves I've ever seen, Facebook announcing a cryptocurrency. So I suppose it's 2 weeks ago now, or last week actually, Facebook came out with Libra, which sounds very like, what's the French for free? Libre in Spanish.
It's a good name, I think. Libra.
Yeah, it's based on is it in ancient Greece or Rome, a unit of measurement?
Yeah, it's a unit. It was some sort of unit of measurement in either Greece or Rome.
Yeah.
And it's also that symbol that the British pound uses. That
it was based on or it was based on the symbol for Libra. But anyway, so Facebook have launched this cryptocurrency called Libra. It's not actually Facebook.
Okay, you go on there. Sorry,
so
I had another question. But
because of their spotted history with trust, Facebook actually launched a subsidiary company called Calibra to launch this cryptocurrency. And there's also the Libra Association. And so this is a collective of 28 companies that will include payment rivals like Visa, MasterCard and PayPal. And supposedly this association is there to veto any objectionable decisions that Facebook might make. It's also, they were very clear that, these are two separate companies. There'll be no cross-sharing of data between, Facebook. Let me get through this already.
Let us be very clear, we don't believe them.
Sorry,
there'll be no cross-sharing of data. But there was a few questions. So, I'm sure by now you've all read about Libra. There's a few questions I had. So number one, is it a cryptocurrency? So, back in late 2017 when everyone was talking about cryptocurrencies, it seemed like a very kind of revolutionary thing. It was moving away from fiat currencies, the dollar and the pound or what have you. It was very, very separate. It was kind of like a revolution, as I've said. So if Facebook or the Libra Association is kind of behind this, I don't know, there seems to be a lot of conversation out there that it's not really a cryptocurrency, it's a digital currency. It has a ledger and things like that, but it'll be run by a company rather than this permissionless type system. But what I thought was really interesting, so Facebook currently has about 2 billion monthly active users. So on launching this, if they were to assume that everyone with a Facebook account starts using this, they'd instantly be the world's most widely used currency. And the market I think they're really trying to target is the remittance market. So people, working in the US and sending money back home to wherever they're from. So I just done a bit of research. In 2017, this is from the Pew Institute, that there was almost $48.5 billion sent from the US to other countries in 2017 in remittances. globally, the remittance total was just over $500 billion in 1 year. Now, if you think, people usually use services like Western Union with fees, I think just from looking around, between $10 and $100 usually to send money. If Facebook, which you can set up a Facebook account in seconds, offer this cheap way to send money back and forth, I think that's a market they can really hit.
Yeah, but is it going to be? I mean, so is it going to be cheaper? Because the remittance market is huge, and I think that's probably the one that they're going to after strongest. And fees. So there's another. PayPal have a remittance company called Zoom, which is very popular. We tried to invest in it just before PayPal acquired it about 4 years ago. But the fees associated with remittance and any sort of actually moving money around the world isn't hard at all. It's just changing a few numbers. It's all the compliance costs that come with it, because money is tightly controlled. So you need to in this country at least, you need to know your customer. You need to look out for money laundering, all that kind of stuff. And if you're creating a system that's digital only, and they're going to say it's cheaper, they're just assuming that they're going to have cost advantages, which I don't necessarily think they are going to have. Now, maybe I'll be wrong about that, but the thing with cryptocurrency is because it's decentralized, it actually could be cheaper because you can just ignore all those regulations. With then the risk kind of passed on to users. This is the problem with Bitcoin and things like that. Is there's no regulation, so it can be really cheap. But then because there's no regulation, there's an awful lot of risk involved.
There's unknowns and risks. Yeah.
The words risk and Facebook are two words I don't like to see together.
Well, I've listened to everything that you've just both said, but I'm aware we had a presentation internally in MyWallSt today which discussed something called the primacy effect. Which is when you're offering a new service or product or brand to be clear, straightforward, make the offering simple, make it short and sweet. I'm still digging in here into what this is and why I would use it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the biggest question is, well, I suppose both of you, would you use Facebook cryptocurrency?
Absolutely not.
I'd need another hour figuring out what exactly I'm getting into,
I had a good think about it, and I actually think, I don't use Facebook an awful lot, but I think this would push me faster towards completely deleting my presence off Facebook and all of that. But then, I don't know.
There's been a couple of I don't know if these are alarmist signals about Libra, but a woman called Katharina Pistor wrote out an article. I think the title of it, which was "Libra Must Be Stopped," and one of the quotes I pulled from her article was, "After years of disregarding privacy, exploiting user data, and failing to control its platform, Facebook has now unveiled a cryptocurrency and payment system that could take down the entire global economy. Governments must intervene before a company that moves fast and breaks things ends up breaking everything." And she just goes on. "Governments must not allow private profit-seeking parties to put the entire global financial system at risk. If banks are too big to fail, then states definitely are. If governments fail to protect us from Facebook's latest act of hubris, we will all pay the price for it." So she's looking at this from a kind of
nervous laughter.
It's a no from me.
And she makes some points, and I'm not an expert on the movements of currencies and macro events like that. But if we think about the failure of a major currency, or if central banks are backing this thing up, and suddenly imagine there's a run on the Libra. What country is ever going to be able to support this, or who's going to take it? Who's going to monitor it? But honestly, I don't know if this is going to work out for them at all.
You think this might be another one of Facebook's flops?
Yeah, Facebook are notorious for flops. If we think about it, Facebook's actual successes have been the main platform, really. Obviously, and then they've basically bought
Instagram.
They bought Instagram. They bought WhatsApp.
They bought Messenger.
Did they buy? I thought Messenger was part of Facebook, and then they kind of split it off.
That's my understanding too.
Yeah, it was part of the original platform. But so I just looked up a couple of Facebook failures over the years. In 2011, they launched Facebook Deals, which was supposed to compete with Groupon. They closed it after 4 months. They had a service called Facebook Gifts, where you could send physical presents to other members. In about 2012, they sold that after a year. They tried the coupon thing again with Facebook offers. Didn't work out.
The dating, yeah.
Yet to be seen. Facebook for Business was announced about 5 years ago. It was going to be the end of LinkedIn. I think this jury's still out on VR, to be honest. I think we're...
Oculus,
I've kind of given up on the idea of VR. Maybe I'll be wrong about that. Facebook Places was going to destroy Foursquare. They tried several times to disrupt the main Snapchat app with a business called Slingshot and another one called Poke. Both of those were total failures. They're actually not very good at product innovation, and they've got this portal thing. People have already forgotten about this. Facebook,
I don't think I ever heard of it.
Facebook launched like a video tablet thing that you can put in your home and talk to people. This was only 6 months ago. We were talking about this like pretty heavily, and no one's heard of it since, because people don't want to buy products from Facebook. They use it because it's got utility. And maybe this will have utility. I could be totally wrong on this, but I don't see it happening. I think there's too many better options out there.
Yeah, so we're not bullish on Facebook money. Moving on then, some other big companies in trouble. Rory, what's going on with big tech?
Well, nothing's going on just yet, but there has been a lot of talk recently about the breakup of big tech. A couple of the bigger companies, kind of Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google, probably being the main ones where regulators are looking into: are these companies too big? Are they too powerful? Do they need splitting up? And one thing I noticed, Tim Cook gave a commencement speech. I think it was at Stanford. The other day, and he's definitely come out by far as the most reasonable, I think, of the big tech CEOs, and probably the most responsible.
I think he's claimed that he has the kind of, I suppose, most north-facing moral compass.
Yeah, Apple have definitely taken the higher ground in all of this, I think.
They're definitely positioning themselves very strongly on privacy, and that this all kind of started, was about 2 years ago after the shootings in California.
Yeah, and they refused to cooperate or to unlock the phone.
Refused to unlock the phone for the FBI. Just a couple of lines I pulled from his commencement speech. This is a good one, I thought. If you've built a chaos factory, you can't dodge the responsibility for the chaos.
I wonder who he was directing that.
Jack Dorsey.
And this was actually, I pulled this actually from an article he wrote, which was kind of a condensed version of the speech he gave. And he's a very good writer. He writes with great poise. When he talks about privacy in particular, he says, think of what's at stake. Everything you write, everything you say, every topic of curiosity, every stray thought, every impulse purchase, every moment of frustration or weakness, every gripe or complaint, every secret shared in confidence. In a world without digital privacy, even if you've done nothing wrong other than think differently, you begin to censor yourself. I thought that was really powerful what he wrote there. And so he's definitely trying to move Apple away from this group of riffraff
chaos factories,
which
is a great phrase.
He's claimed, and I think he's doing a really good job of it. But on the flip side of that, I think we could see some interesting spin-offs over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, while looking into this, spin-offs are really good at creating value, like really good. There's an index run by Bloomberg, which is the spin-off index, and they measure the performance of companies that have been spun off from bigger parents. They started it on January 1st, 2003, and the performance of companies that have spun off since then, running up to March this year, was 973% return versus the S&P's 342%. So that means spun-off companies, on average, generate 3 times the returns of normal businesses.
So PayPal's the big one, obviously.
PayPal's the most recent example that we would know about and talk about quite a lot. But I mean, can you imagine, like, in a couple of years, you might be able to invest just in Amazon Web Services, or you might be able to invest directly in Instagram or directly in YouTube even.
Yeah.
This will actually, I think, create some incredible businesses that will generate an awful lot of value for investors if it ever comes to pass.
So just on that topic, Rory, before we came up here, you were talking about the research you're doing for the new stock of the month, which is coming to that on Monday.
Yeah.
And you were talking about brands, and you kind of pitched a question to the office about, which were the most kind of powerful brands. I think you pitched it.
Yeah, I used the word powerful, and maybe that was the wrong word to use. It's hard to kind of, people hear that word differently. But yeah, the sort of the research for this month's stock of the month, and I'll try my best not to give it away because it's better. Everyone wants the surprise on Monday.
Not the surprise on Monday. Mondays are bad.
But yeah, we're thinking of kind of brands and this idea of like how big brands can kind of, what Scott Galloway talks about when he says create monogamous relationships with consumers. So if you think about Apple as being a particularly strong brand, the the hardcore Apple users, not even just the hardcore Apple users, but they'll have the iPhone, they'll have the EarPods, Maeve, the AirPods, the Apple Watch, the MacBook Pro or the Air.
Yes, I have all of those things.
They just create, and like you just basically devote yourself to one company.
Yeah.
For your particular needs.
Yeah. Well, like the power of brand, like I think got my first Apple product when I started art college when I was 18. And I remember unboxing it. I still have the memory. I remember the room I was in.
Yeah.
I remember what it felt like, and I remember being bowled over, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And I've never had any other PC.
Opening up an Apple product it is an experience, not to sound a bit cliched, but it is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's just I think they have a team working in California on every aspect of that experience. So kind of looking at that kind of as a theme for this month's stock of the month, and I was kind of asking around the office what people consider kind of powerful brands in various spaces, and then obviously I came across Forbes, which does a yearly roundup of the world's most valuable brands, and in fairness to them, they have a methodology which they talk about and they explain. It's not entirely explained, but it's kind of based on how much money is generated, they think, just because of the equity of a brand. But I thought their list was a bit... It didn't really resonate with me when I think of kind of powerful brands, or a lot of it didn't resonate with me when I thought of powerful brands. Number one was Apple, which is hard to argue with. Number two was Google, which I can kind of see. I consider it a strong brand. I don't know if I'd put it as number two in the world. Then Microsoft, which
branding, no, I wouldn't.
I don't think of it as a powerful brand. It's the kind of thing I always feel with Microsoft you're kind of forced to use it a lot.
Yeah,
it's interesting though, because this is where the nuance comes in. Because me and you, well, us three were having a conversation about this on the office floor, and you mentioned Tesla as a brand, Rory, and you said what comes to mind for me straight away. What the brand evokes is the cars. That's the visual that gets thrown into my head. But for me, it's Musk. It's the leader.
Okay,
so how you perceive brand is very interesting.
Yeah.
That's one of those problematic brands.
Yeah.
Number 4 was Amazon anyway. Number 5, Facebook. No, I think we've talked about it enough today, but it doesn't strike me as a powerful brand.
Okay.
If they said Instagram, I would have been like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, obviously, they're doing it a different way than I was kind of thinking of it.
It's just kind of the word powerful even is very subjective.
That's
It's powerful that when I think of Facebook, I immediately think of privacy issues. Like that's still powerful, but it's
the
not
power they wield against
power,
the user. Like I would be similar, James. I think I probably would have, if I had answered your question, Rory, which I know I didn't, which you posted on Slack. I would have. I think Facebook would have been in there.
Well, Slack is one there with a really great brand. I love Slack really embodies the kind of the overall thing. It's been doing that kind of collaborative workspace. I love Slack's branding.
Yeah, same.
That other company we have in the MyWallSt app, Duluth. I remember we added them. They're a very, very small
it's
retailer.
Funny you mention it, James.
They have a great brand as well.
That's why I bought Duluth, and it didn't go so well currently. I'm going to hold long and see what happens, but it was the brand.
Yeah.
And it was the products.
Yeah, they say to have a strong brand, you need one of two things. You either need to have pricing power, so you can charge more than your competitors, or you need to lower search costs. Which I think a good example would be kind of Heinz ketchup. No one wants to try out every single ketchup in the world. They just go to the store, they see Heinz, and they grab it. So they're the kind of two things I think that makes a really strong brand. But there's also that kind of aspirational thing about brands, how they make you feel, how you want to show yourself off to the world. Apple's definitely one of those very aspirational brands. Tiffany's is particularly strong in that way as well. Nike, I think, is a very strong brand.
Sure.
So yeah, that was just kind of topic of conversation that I thought was interesting, and how the difference between what you call like a valuable brand and possibly a strong brand.
So this is your chance now, Rory. Give a small pitch for the stock of the month without giving it away.
It's about brands.
And it's out on Monday.
Poker face. So along with the stock of the month, we've lots of new stuff coming in the MyWallSt app too. We'll have a new stock in July. I think you're perusing the shortlist at the moment, Rory.
I am, yeah.
And we also have the new expert opinion piece in the app at the moment, and it deals with all the craziness around Beyond Meat's recent listing. So you can check out all of this stuff, plus loads more content, and our full market-beating list of 103 stocks in the MyWallSt app now. Maeve.
Jargon busters. We are starting this week with, it's actually a question that came from a call that I was on with one of our longest members in the My Wall Street app.
Okay.
Shout out to Thomas. He was in southern US, and on a lovely sunny day he brought me out his backyard, and it was a video call. So he actually introduced me to his French bulldog called Andy, who I screenshotted with his permission.
No wonder his question's getting asked.
Andy is a great name for a dog.
It's a cute dog.
I love animals.
I posted it in Slack. It went down well.
I love animals with like really human names.
Yeah. When you meet a dog, call Roger.
My neighbour had a horse once and it was just called John, and I just used to crack me up.
Someone with a terrier called Alan. It just it makes you laugh. But I think Thomas has been with us for over 3 years now, so we had a lot to talk about. But he asked me a question that a lot of people ask. I know it's a broad one, so we'll see how we tackle it. But basically, it's how do MyWallSt approach looking for new stocks? So where does the research or the idea generation begin?
That's a really tough question to answer. I think we've tried to answer it before, but maybe not. But yeah, it's hard to pinpoint. I suppose you kind of create yourself a little kind of, not bubble necessarily, but like you start reading a lot of financial stuff. Essentially, you read financial websites, financial blogs, technology blogs. Twitter is a really good source for just hearing people talk about different companies, just seeing ticker symbols kind of flash up in front of you. And then if you kind of see them kind of coming up more and more, you might look into the company a bit more. You might add it to a watch list, might get onto the long list and the short list eventually. Reading the Wall Street Journal every day, just you get hints about companies. Reading guys like the Motley Fool are always generating great ideas. Their podcast is particularly good, and they talk about a lot of companies, similar companies to the ones that we would tend to look into. But then there's other times where you kind of take a broader idea, maybe like a macro idea, and you try and dig into possible solutions to either opportunity or a problem. So I suppose a good example would be ShotSpotter. That came about from thinking about the problem of gun crime and how it's possibly going to be resolved, or if there is any possible technological solutions.
Okay.
So that was kind of a more broad idea that ended up boiling down to a very specific company. Again, kind of on a macro trend, we knew people were spending a lot more on pet care over the last 10, 20 years. So looking into companies in the pet care space, finding every company that was involved in pet care and picking the 2 or 3 that we thought were the strongest in the space.
And is there any resource that would outline, I suppose, global spends and trends and kind of industries that are performing particularly well?
I don't know if any singular source. No, it's just reading articles.
Okay.
Reading Bloomberg, any kind of financial literature you can get your hands on. They'll typically talk about. You'll find articles about various trends, various industries that are doing well, various industries that are under pressure. And that's just, that'll start you down a path that'll lead you to, hopefully lead you to a good company that you feel like you can invest in.
Okay. You said reading a lot there, so I'm guessing that's the kind of key takeaway.
Yeah, it's just reading a lot, really.
Okay.
There's no magic website there's stock screeners and things like that people can do. You can go in and put in various metrics that you want, and you'll get a list of stocks that fit those metrics, but that doesn't really tell you much about the companies. That's kind of making a long list slightly less long.
Sure. Okay. Thomas, hope that helps. Next one should be a little lighter, and I think we've covered before, but for any new listeners, they might benefit. It is a question on stock splits. What is the impact of a stock split on a company, and what is the reasoning behind it?
Numerically, the idea of, or technically, a stock split should have absolutely no impact on a company. Literally what they're doing is they're just taking all the shares they have. Let's say they have 10 million shares out there, and they're just splitting them a certain way. So if they have 10 million shares valued at $100 and they split them 2 to 1, they then have 20 million shares valued at $50. So the only real reason, or the reason companies do it most of the time, is when maybe the price of the stock has gone up to, the $500, $400 mark, and they're trying to make them a bit more liquid in the market, so allow people to invest in them a bit easier. Then you have reverse stock splits, which I think we talked about a few months ago.
Blue Apron had one recently.
Blue Apron had one recently where they they'd actually fallen below the threshold that the stock market allowed them to operate on. So they were under $1 a share. So they did a reverse stock split where so every one share became every 15 shares became one share.
Yeah.
I've confused myself there. Therefore, they went from having like $1 share to a $15 share, and that kept them above a certain threshold. That's usually a pretty bad sign when a company does a reverse stock split. It shows that they're really struggling.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the main point is though that the actual equity you own in a company doesn't change.
No, it doesn't change at all. Like literally nothing changes. The price of the share gets cut in half, and the amount of shares that you own doubles. That's just it's just a kind of technical solution to balancing how costly the price is of the share.
Okay, sure. Lastly, for Jargon Busters, it's just quite a straight question on what has happened to you to you this year.
You're going to ask me what happened to you too.
Yeah. I don't want to go there. I think we might need a separate podcast.
Let's not get into Bono.
It's from another member, actually, Jordan. So he's just mentioned that it's down 50% since February, and his question is just what happened.
A lot of the times things don't have to happen for shares to go down. I think this is probably one of the hardest things to explain sometimes. You often get questions from people being like, this stock was at this price and now it's at this price. What happened? Sometimes things do happen. So, I mean, of the things that happened with 2U, they missed a couple of, they forecasted revenue numbers, not by a long shot by any chance. They just, a couple of earnings didn't go as well as people had hoped they would go. Probably the kind of longer term story is that a company like 2U is really trying to disrupt what is a very old age industry in education. And, they say the industries that need to be disrupted the most are the ones that have seen the highest rise in prices without delivering sufficient value to compensate for that. And James, you sent a tweet a couple of weeks ago, which was the relative price of the price change in the United States from 1997 to December 2017, and the highest are hospital services, college textbooks and college tuition are just like miles ahead of everything else, way over inflation. So there are it's two really, I suppose, college textbooks, college tuition being education, and hospital services are three industries that are really rife for disruption. Mm-hmm. And 2U is one of those companies that is trying to do that. They're trying to basically disrupt the way education is delivered. So they're creating a delivery system for education that can possibly spread it to a broader audience. Now, they have had some kind of criticisms. There was an article in the Huffington Post a couple of months ago where someone really went after 2U and said that the system that they created wasn't actually helping spread education at all. It was just generating more money for the colleges. So that was quite a negative viewpoint. I don't know if I'd necessarily agreed with it. I think there's more a bigger systemic problem that 2U is trying to at least offer a solution to. But yeah, that kind of negative press probably dulls down the appetite for the stock, and you see it trading at just a lower multiple than it was at months ago. But it's not a profitable company yet, so there's very little kind of numerical reasons why it's down a certain percent or why it was up. It was up massively before that. So yeah, it's a kind of sentiment play.
Okay.
Cool.
We now arrive at elevator pitch, which is this week themed around a successful company that you would have passed on in a pitch meeting.
Yeah, this was you came with this idea, Rory, or
it was
you stole this idea.
I stole it from Twitter. A guy on Twitter posted it. I thought it was a really
That's
good
where all the
idea.
good ideas are, the Chaos Factory. Okay, Rory, I don't know what you're going to pitch. James, I can see what yours is, so we'll start with the unknown. Rory.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to give the same answer I gave the guy on Twitter, which is, and it's a company we seem to be talking about quite a lot recently, which is Lululemon. And it was literally the first company that came to mind when I saw this tweet, which was, did we give the full reason, the company we would pass on in a pitch meeting?
Yeah.
So if someone sat down and pitched me a yoga apparel retailer that was going to charge $150 to $200
that had very
for a
fancy
pair,
straps.
yeah, for a pair of yoga pants, I would have laughed me out of the room, because they might have done well for a brief period of time, and then Nike would come in and just roll them over.
Yeah.
And I've been proven wrong. Lululemon has been an incredible success. They're a vertically integrated company in a horizontally integrated competitive landscape. They've managed to control their image, control their supply or their distribution to customers so well. They're really selling a lifestyle, selling an experience, and they've become a real giant in the space in the last few years. So well done to them.
Lululemon.
And they've managed to do it without any kind of constant CEO at the helm, which is even more impressive.
They have had a problem with CEOs, haven't they?
They've had about 5 or 6 in the last few years.
Okay.
It's mad.
Right, Lululemon first up. James, over to you.
So for me, I'm going with Stitch Fix. So a recent enough addition to the MyWallSt app. It pitches itself as an online personal styling service. So basically they send out boxes of clothes, or fixes as they call them, to customers. So this is something, it's not exactly a new idea. I know other retailers, fashion retailers particularly, have done this before, like Nordstrom and Under Armour, and it's always had limited success. They've had decent revenue growth and subscriber growth in their most recent quarterly report, but I'm just very skeptical of the company because I think it's rife for disruption by a larger competitor like Amazon, obviously. But it was Emmett who was actually a big fan of Stitch Fix. He pitched it to us a few times, Rory, and what really kind of sold me on Stitch Fix was, to paraphrase Emmett, it's not an online fashion company, but it's a data company that's shipping fashion. So the amount of data that Stitch Fix get off their customers in, figuring out the styles they want, and that iterative back and forth. They have a great subscription-based revenue model. And just that recommender system. I think it's a cool way to think of a company like that as a data company rather than a fashion company.
Yeah. I think Emmett was the first person who brought my attention towards Stitch Fix as well.
Yeah, it's not available here. I think it's coming to the UK soon, but it's something I really want to try now.
I'm really curious about it. So I suppose in the spirit of elevator pitches, I probably would have passed on Lululemon ahead of Stitch Fix.
Does that mean I'm right or wrong?
I don't know.
Because isn't it about which one you pass?
All I know is that if I had heard the, I suppose, proposition for Lululemon, I would have said no way, but now I want their leggings. So as a consumer, does that mean that you win? I think so.
We're all winners.
Oh, yeah, we're all winners.
So that's about it from this week's Stock Club. Don't forget about all the great new stuff in the MyWallSt app at the moment. We've also got a rebrand, you might have noticed, so enjoy that. If there's anything else you want us to discuss or explain on the next episode of Stock Club, please make sure to get in touch. You can reach us on Twitter, that's @MyWallSt, or email us on pod@mywallstreet.com. That's pod@mywallstreet.com. If you enjoy Stock Club, please leave a rating for it or a review on iTunes or whatever podcast player you listen to us on. We'd really like to hear from you. That's it from today, so thanks for listening and happy investing.
See you next time.